I've got, for a price of $70, I've got demand of 400. For a price of $80, I've got demand of 300. Now, you say to yourself, okay, I've got 2 points. How realistic is it to estimate a demand curve from 2 points? But for the purposes of this problem, that's what we're going to do. So what I can do is a couple of things here. Obviously, the easiest thing to do is going to be to create a scatter plot, right? So there's a scatter plot. And right away, you can see that it's got, let's see, how does this work? It looks to me like it's got demand. Whoa, how did that work? 400 and 300? That's not working. It's not doing this right, is it? Let's do it a different way. Why wasn't it? Maybe if I do it, I'll reverse the axes, right? If I just reverse the axes, will that work? Switch row column. There we go. Yeah, that looks better there, doesn't it? Okay, so I've got my scatter plot, and the way I can do this, the easiest way, is I can just add a trend line, right? And if I add a linear trend line and display the equation on the chart, I get an answer that says y is equal to 1100 minus 10x. Where have I seen that before? Oh yeah, over there. Okay. So this is my demand function. So now the question comes about is, okay, so my intercept is 1100. My slope is, what's my slope? Minus 10. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to create a model that says, okay, what is, in this case, I'm going to look at my maximum profit. I want to maximize profit. So let's go ahead and let's do a couple things here. Let's start off by identifying the parameters that we've got. Okay. I want to maximize profit. So I'm going to make profit my objective function. And what do I want to do? I want to select the price that maximizes profit. Right? So price is going to be a decision variable for me. All right? So my demand is going to be equal to what? Yeah, my demand is going to be equal to 1100 plus, since I've already got the coefficient as its negative slope, I can say the coefficient times the price. Right? So for a price of 0, my demand is 1100, which is not surprising. All right. My profit then is going to be equal to what? It's equal to, well, let's do something here. Let's create some range names. It'll be easier to figure out what's going on. Okay. So I'm going to create a range name there. I'm going to create some range names there. I'm going to create some range names there. Okay. Now my profit is going to equal to my demand times, and here I can just go easily to price minus cost. Right? In other words, I'm doing the margin calculation. Price minus cost to get margin, and margin times demand to get profit. Okay. Well, not surprisingly, with a price of 0 and a demand of 1,100, I'm losing a lot of money. Let's just throw in a number. What did we say our revenue maximizing price was when we solved that problem? 55. So let's just plug in 55 for a minute and see what we get. We get a profit of 27.50. I'm going to take a note over here for price equal to 55. I get profit equal to 27.50. And I'm just doing this to keep a note myself. Okay. So all we have to do is we just have to guess, right? Just trial and error, put in different prices and see what happens. Well, I mean, we could, because why? We know that the shape of this objective function is a parabola, right? I mean, I showed you earlier that we could substitute the demand, we could substitute price, and substitute cost. Cost is a constant, so we're going to end up with a parabola. So we could just keep plugging in numbers to see if the profit increases, and when it starts decreasing, we know we've gone too far in one direction. But why would we do that when we've got Solver? Let's use Solver to solve this problem. So I'm going to crawl up Solver, and I want to say, okay, I want to set profit as my objective function, and I want to maximize profit. So that's okay. I want to do it by changing the value of price. So that's okay. And I want to do it subject to the constraint of, well, what constraints do I have?
You don't want to set a price below cost?
I would say that's correct. I would not want to have a price that is less than my cost. Because I know clearly if I do that, I'm going to not have a profit. Do I have any other constraints? Well, I've got the non-negative constraint. But when I said I couldn't make my price less than cost, that's going to force it to be positive. So. Thank you. Thank you very much. That would have been really interesting, wouldn't it? Okay. Now it makes better sense, doesn't it? Okay. Here's my GRG nonlinear solver, and I can go into the options for nonlinear, and you see right here it says I can use the multi-start option. But I'm not going to do that on this one because I think I don't expect to have multiple optimums, right? If it's a parabola, then I should only have one optimum. So I'm going to be okay without that. So now if I click on solve, I should get an answer. Solver found a solution. And this is what I was talking about down here. Solver has found at least a local optimal solution. Okay, so essentially it says that we think it is the optimum, but we're not positive. But in this case, we are positive because we got an answer of $9,000 in profit. Now, how can we verify this?
Graph it.
We can graph it.
Do a data table and graph it.
We can do a data table. Let's go ahead. Let's do a data table then. All right, so how are we going to do a data table? We're going to do a data table by doing what? Well, we can put profit here. There's their equation. And now we want to test around 80, right? So let's start with 70 and go to 90. Does that make sense? Okay, and now to fill out the data table, what do I need to do? What if analysis, data table, my column input cell is what? Price, right? Click on OK. Oops, everything says 900, right? Or 9,000. Why is that? Well, because my options say on formulas, automatic except for data tables. Remember, if I push F9, it's going to stop recording, so I can't push F9. So I'm going to change it to that. And sure enough, all right. So there's my max right there at 9,000. And sure enough, if I go beyond 80, it starts to drop. If I go below 80, it starts to drop. So it does look like 80 is my optimum. And just to be on the safe side, I'll plot this, and there you go. You can see that in fact it is a parabola, and profit is maximized at a price of 80. What would happen if I tried to use a linear solver to solve this problem? Well, let's go back and look. If I tried to use a linear solver, the linearity conditions required by this are not satisfied. So clearly, I have to use the GRG. Note also that something else interesting is happening here. What is my profit maximizing price? 80. What is my revenue maximizing price? 55. In other words, they are not the same thing. Now, I made two very big assumptions. I made one assumption that said demand was a linear function of price, and the other big assumption I made was that cost was constant. But those are probably, over a small range of values, those are probably not bad assumptions. What insight are you getting from this? Remember before when we talked about getting insights, and one of the insights I talked about, for example, was that it seems like you would always want to make your most valuable product, or maximize your most valuable product. Or I think the term we used was maximize your most profitable product, right? And then we used the LP, and the LP said, no, that's not always the case. Sometimes your gut feel gives you a bad signal. It makes you do things that you would not ordinarily do, or shouldn't ordinarily do. In your gut, you want to make the most of your most profitable product, but in fact, that's not always the case. Here, your gut might say, I want to maximize revenue. Who doesn't want to maximize revenue? Right? But if you maximize revenue, how much money do you leave on the table? Yeah, almost $6,000, right? That's a lot of money, given the magnitude of these values. So part of the insight that I want you to get, just from this simple example, is that maximizing revenue is not the same as maximizing profit. here's a very vivid illustration of how different they can be. What are your thoughts?